Welcome to Navigating Hope, your compass to health empowerment. I'm Dr. Jaime Hope, steering you through healthcare, overcoming overwhelm, personal goals, and emergencies. We'll navigate the healthcare maze with actionable insights and real-world advice, unlocking the secrets to a healthier, more vibrant life. Join us to take control of your well-being and make informed decisions for your health and your future. Stay with us as we unravel the mysteries of medicine, wellness, and life's unforeseen challenges, helping you bypass the ER with a dose of knowledge. Stay tuned till the end of the episode with a recap of your actionable insights and a free gift. Let's chart a course to your well-being together. All right, welcome back to another episode of Navigating Hope. I am so excited to be joined today by Dr. Evan Ciarloni. And I even said that right, didn't I?
That's right.
I am so excited. So you are board certified in internal medicine and geriatric medicine. And so helping all of the medical care around people, particularly our aging population, which is a growing part of our population. So that's just so incredibly important. This population can often be underserved. So Dr. Ciarloni, what made you passionate? What made you interested in serving this segment of the population?
Yeah. So as long as I can remember growing up in Mississippi, being surrounded by my elderly family members, we were really close. And along with that came health challenges that were unique to folks living in a rural area. So in Mississippi, got exposed to the healthcare system pretty early as I was doing life with my family members. And I knew that I wanted to make a difference to maybe when I got older, help ease some of the suffering that they went through with their health challenges. So internal medicine spoke to me kind of right off the bat as a specialist for adults, and then in particular, older adults and geriatrics. Those were some of the fields that really piqued my interest right from the beginning.
And thank you for doing that. I mean, truly, that it is so important because as the population ages, there's a lot of myths around there. There are myths that dementia is inevitable, illness is inevitable. So, and we even talk about this aging gracefully. So, let's talk about the realities of aging. What is realistic and preventable? What is not? Walk us through that process.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. This is just old age, or sort of complaining about the inevitable aging process. But there's a concept called health span, and it goes along with lifespan, but it's about the idea that we can get older, but we don't have to sort of be subject to ill health. With the right types of habits and lifestyle choices, we can live well into advanced age.
I think that's really key. That I wish health span, that word was known as much as the word lifespan, because lifespan, there's a lot of things that contribute to it, but your health span, you talked about habits and choices. So what are some of the things that we could do, those of us who are young, or at least we still like to think so, and then for our elderly family members as well, what are the choices that we can do to help maximize that health span?
So things like having regular visits with your doctor, focusing on nutrition, good quality sleep, physical activity, and relationships, all of these things are components of lifestyle that can have compounded effects as we age. And a lot of folks think, well, this is the way I've been living for so many years. It's too late for me to make a change. But it really doesn't matter at what age you start. Focusing on some of these behaviors that can lead to big benefits down the road is always a good choice.
And I find occasionally I'm fighting against some maybe family legend, like, oh, my grandpa or my great grandpa smoked a pack a day and drank whiskey every day and he lived to be 100. Okay, but that doesn't mean you should. How do you address those conversations?
Totally. I think it can be challenging in different cultures and contexts. There are certain things that are just sort of perceived as normal. And so I like to talk with my patients that I see every day where they're willing to start. It may not be that they're ready to go out and run a 5K or to go on an all vegan diet. But if we can pick up on some threads that they might have any interest or experience in, then we kind of personalize the plan tailored to what they want to focus on.
I think that's so important because if you have a one size fits all approach, you know it's not going to fit anybody. And I love that a trained clinician like you can say, okay, here's a list of things like nutrition, sleep, smoking, like what would interest you to start to talk about? So say somebody does want to talk to you about nutrition and they're open-minded because they really want to expand that lifespan. What kind of thoughts and recommendations could help support that healthy aging?
I hear you. So, there's a lot of opinions about what the best sort of diet is, and everybody has their own sort of take on it. But again, contextualizing a person's diet and their already existing lifestyle is super important. So, to build awareness, I might recommend that they track their food, track their diet, and something like MyFitnessPal or any other of those apps that can sort of help build awareness around what folks are consuming and make targeted adjustments from there. But generally speaking, in terms of a diet, focusing on whole food diets and staying away from ultra processed foods, those are two really sort of low hanging fruits, for lack of a better word, to make some big changes.
And how important is the role of protein? Because we hear in the fitness world, in the exercise and bodybuilding world, like protein, protein, protein. Is protein important for older adults?
Definitely. So, protein is a really important macromolecule that maintains muscle health and supports other functions in the body as well. So, making sure that the foods that we reach for are nutrient dense, especially with protein, is super important. But then I also don't neglect these other components like fiber that we often just aren't getting enough of in our diet, but we don't really think about too much.
Yeah, and I get that from patients. So being in the ER until they come in with a fecal impaction or horrific constipation, and I'm having the conversations with them about fiber. But what I would love is for people to do that on a more regular basis so they don't end up in the ER with those concerns.
Right, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
in the primary care office.
Yes, absolutely. So starting with, I mean, at what age should people start looking at their health and their health span so they can have that longevity? Is there a specific time we should start?
Even as a geriatrician, I always love in my practice when adults come to see me in their 20s, in their 30s. And it's never too early to start thinking about preventive screening, getting to know your personal doctor, and identifying any risks that you might have according to your family history or your lifestyle habits already. And these changes are additive, they compound on one another. So, focusing on perhaps your dietary habits in your 20s, getting good control of your cholesterol, screening for high blood pressure, and controlling that if necessary, all prevents bad outcomes in your 60s, 70s, and 80s that can lead to things like stroke, heart attack, and even dementia.
Yeah, so when you're exercising today, you're building the strong bones to prevent that hip fracture in the future.
Absolutely.
Like your future you is very grateful that you did that weight bearing exercise. Oh my goodness. So let's talk about emergencies. Being an ER, that's kind of my favorite. What are some of the common emergencies you see in older adults, and what are some steps that we as family members or listeners who are a little older can take to prevent some of those emergencies?
This is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. How do we avoid hospitalizations and ER visits? And nobody wants to go to the hospital. Nobody wants to sit in an emergency room waiting area for hours on end. So, thinking about what we know about the more common ED diagnoses and hospital admission diagnoses, we have a lot of data related to insurance claims. And in the population I serve, we see a lot of folks go in for things like heart failure exacerbations, severe infections like sepsis from a variety of causes, shortness of breath, and others. So, really getting a handle on these conditions before they develop into emergencies is my approach. A lot of these things can be treated at home if only we knew about them.
And that's back to your point about making sure you have those regular visits with your established doctor so they know you. Because your job is to give people advice to help them, like, here are the things you can do at home, keep an eye on you so we don't get to that level.
Yeah, so that's number one, right? Having a primary care doctor that you trust. And the second sort of point around that is that what's the plan for evenings, weekends, and holidays? Lots of times we're not able to get in touch with our doctors during those times, but there are services around those clinics that provide for 24/7 communication. So I encourage everybody that I talk to have a plan for when the doctor is closed.
And that's really, really helpful because the more you plan, the better things are going to go for you. Let's talk about those other kind of emergencies. Falls. What
Yeah,
that's a big one.
absolutely. Yeah, falls, you know, are so devastating often in our older adults because they do lead to fractures and oftentimes permanent disability that folks just don't recover from. So, fall prevention is key. Again, with these other conditions, it's sort of early management and prevention, but making sure that folks are being screened in their primary care office for falls, early connection with physical therapy and occupational therapy, even to get an assistive device, and more than just any assistive device, but the right one for them.
And that's so key. So getting that screening, understanding your fall risk. Let's talk about stigma around assistive devices. Have you noticed sometimes some pushback or some reluctance with those?
Absolutely. When folks are first getting started out on these, it's it's such a stigma. The perception of feeling infirm or coming to terms with your own limitations as you age, it's hard on everybody. But I found that the more we can normalize it with their peers, the better and more likely they are to use it. I've treated several patients that were initially reluctant to use their cane or their rolling walker or even a traditional walker. But the more that we could point to their friends in the community, the more they seem to accept it and really understand the value, and their adherence, so to speak, goes up. And my grandmother in particular, she's always been super independent, but when she moved into the assisted living facility, she had several falls right from the beginning, which led to, of course, emergency room visits, CAT scans, and just lots of other inconveniences that got in the way of her quality of life. But seeing other peers in the assisted living that were using a walker made it super easy for her to get on board with adopting that tool. And she never goes anywhere without it.
And I love that because a lot of times when I see a fall in the ER and I say, do you need help accessing these tools? And the family member will say, oh no, she's got like 5 walkers. She just won't use them. But then I see patients who come in with their walker or cane bedazzled or like colors or streamer, where they've just accepted that this is part of their identity as opposed to an inhibiting thing or a stigma. And they use it and they don't fall as often. Plus, I
So
think it's
true.
really adorable.
Right, right. Yeah, and there are all sorts of different bags and sort of things that you can add to your walker to personalize it and make it more functional for you. And just like any medical treatment, we want to pick the right one for the patient that they'll take. And so really trying to understand what are those factors that keep people from using a device or taking a medication is so key in my practice to make sure that they'll use it.
What are some simple things that they or their loved ones can do around the house to prevent the falls?
Yeah, so the environment is super important. My sister is an occupational therapist, and she and we spitball in these conversations all the time. But removing any clutter, if that's possible, scatter rugs that are small and might sit around the house, moving cords out of the way that are exposed. So any sort of obvious clutter that you can remove in the home is a low-hanging fruit. But other things like step downs and areas in the home that folks with vision problems might have trouble seeing or noticing, particularly if folks are wearing bifocals, that might take the help of somebody a little more skilled, like an occupational therapist, to do an in-home assessment. And those are readily available and they're trained to do it.
And I think that's really key. I'm so excited your sister. I love OT. I've done OT myself for various injuries, but it really helps people maximize. And there's nothing like an in-home assessment, right? Because it's easy to say, oh, I get around fine. Well, show me how you go up your stairs. It's a whole different ballgame there.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So mobility is huge because independence is a really important factor, and a fall, as you mentioned, or a severe infection or an illness that gets out of control, those are the top things that take away someone's independence. So how do you have those conversations when people are reluctant, but their biggest priority is independence?
That's a great question. And so framing the conversation less around the outcomes we want to avoid and sort of our perspective as doctors, that doesn't seem to get the change that we're looking for. But when we frame it around what matters most to the patient, those activities that they want to be engaging in, we know that we have better success rates anecdotally. The research bears that out, that focusing on an individual's priorities is really what makes the difference.
Yeah, and I think that's so key. So there's often an awkward conversation when your loved one who's getting older probably shouldn't be driving anymore. So how I mean, I've seen that the last time my grandma ever drove, and she had severe macular degeneration, had no business being on the road, but she ran through a red light at a massive intersection, a left-hand turn through this, and she's like, I think I scared a few people. Maybe I should stop driving. We're like, Grandma, we're glad you're not dead, and nor is anybody else. But outside of those extreme situations, how does that conversation happen? Because now it's an independence thing versus a safety thing.
Yeah, it's so tricky and it's hard for everybody, even folks that are trained to do this. So, really emphasizing that dignity and that autonomy is something that can go a long way in these conversations. When you're delivering this bad news that unfortunately we have to make some changes. And I would just say don't do it alone. Really enlist the support of your other providers, the other professionals that are involved in the care of the individual. And using something like a social worker, a licensed clinical social worker, can go a long way in having these tough conversations.
Yeah, because as these issues start to grow, so now we're talking about somebody who maybe has some mobility issues. Maybe their ability to drive is now being limited for their own safety. What happens? So, in addition to the dignity and the independence thing, now we're looking at one of what I think, and I'm confident you agree, is one of the most dangerous things for elderly people, which is isolation. So, let's talk about that.
Yeah, isolation, loneliness, these are problems that are actually pretty common to all adults in America. In 2023, there was a US Surgeon General report that found that 1 in 2 Americans exhibit loneliness. And there was some more in that report about the health implications of that. But we know that these types of emotional states are really harmful and in some cases can have a mortality impact as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
And that's crazy. Like, I hope everybody who's listening, like, stop your car right now. 15 cigarettes a day. We all know, like, there's no mystery left that cigarettes are bad for you. I think we've all thoroughly crossed that bridge. Like, loneliness is the new smoking. Isolation is the
Yeah,
new smoking. That's crazy in terms of the health damage. Do you find that your population is aware how dangerous this is?
no, and it's not something that we talk about routinely in healthcare. I mean, we talk about the way that other sort of organic conditions can contribute to disease, but we don't talk about sort of the emotional states that can contribute. But it's true, there's a link here between heart disease, dementia, depression, and even early death that are related to social isolation.
And it's terrible. And I really, my opinion, whether it's popular or not, I really think we missed the boat during the pandemic when they said, social distancing. We absolutely should not have been social distancing. We should have been physically distancing and getting more socially connected than ever because that was stressful. And I feel like some of that social isolation just continued because people got into habits and got lonely. Have you seen a difference in your career, like pre and post pandemic?
I think so. We have seen that even folks that stay engaged, that are using the internet, and a lot of folks in this demographic, in the older adults, 60s, 70s, and 80s, are comfortable with the internet. Yet these statistics persist. Um, we've seen that even our traditional social media outlets like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and even using things like Zoom and FaceTime, they're not really making a difference in affecting some of these numbers that we're seeing.
Well, and especially social media. I mean, you could just doom scroll, or you can scroll and see everybody else is living their best life, as if any of that's real. And I'm not, all of those things. So tell us about, so you worked on a solution. You were actually so passionate about this and saw the massive danger in isolation that you actually wanted to work toward a way to help patients and help people not suffer the medical consequences of isolation. So can you tell us about Connect?
Totally. So I serve as a medical advisor for Connect, which is essentially a social media platform for families that helps families share what matters most to them. And that's things like family stories, traditions, memories. This is a place where folks can really get a sense of belonging. They can participate in a way that they might not otherwise use Facebook for, or Twitter or Instagram. And I love that idea of doom scrolling, where you just are sort of a passive participant in social media, other people's lives. But this is a way for families to really get together and share the things that matter to them. And there's even the opportunity to create a physical book using some of those stories to make it even more tangible. And I think the biggest thing is the ways that Connect, this platform, can bring people out into the real world with this physical product, getting together for in person meetups. So, this technology isn't just a destination, it's a way station to get folks more connected to one another in real life.
And I love the stories because there are things that maybe I or my grandma wouldn't have posted on Facebook or just kind of into the wild west of social media. But to have a place where my grandma can just tell a story about what it was like, the whole expression irons in the fire, that she literally, like, they didn't have electric irons. They actually had to put it in the fire and iron clothes. And so just hearing those stories from her perspective, it's fascinating. And my son is 11 and he has, since I'm from the 1900s, he acts like I am telling these ancient dinosaur stories. I'm like, you think, I mean, I'm older than the internet. My grandma didn't even have electric appliances. And so to hear, of course, the extraordinary things, but the day-to-day things, what their lives were like, what a huge blessing.
Absolutely. You nailed it. It's a blessing to have that connection from generations above to generations below. And it helps everybody. It helps each generation feel a greater sense of belonging, which is really what underlies this sense of isolation and loneliness. It's that feeling of, I don't belong. And so you're exactly right. Capturing those little anecdotes and sort of daily sort of stories is a tool that, or I'll say it this way, Connect has tools that capture those daily stories that we might not otherwise even think about recording.
And I think it helps people see the commonalities, like letting my daughter know that her great grandfather was also a talented musician. My daughter is a talented musician. I am an exceptionally untalented, if that's a word, tone deaf shower singer. So I'm like, don't worry, honey, there were other people in your family who loved music and were talented and amazing string players. And it's cool to kind of connect with that. And I think those things that help anchor us to our family, to our heritage are just masterful.
Absolutely.
Have you have you seen a lot of people utilizing this, using it to meet up? Tell me some stories about what has come out of this.
Yeah, so we're in early stages of the launch of this platform. So we're still gathering some stories, but our founder, Omar, has done a lot of connecting with his family in Puerto Rico. and saved a lot of stories and family recipes and traditions, and is really sort of discovering, like you mentioned with your family, his heritage and how that plays a part in his own story from generations above.
I know it makes me wish that I'd had this for other family members who are gone now, because now we can't ask them the questions. Again, it's not always, cool, there was this big event that happened, but just what were the regular things for you? What was life like? Where did you live? I know my great grandpa, I think, came over on the Lusitania before it sank. Everyone's like, oh, that sounds fake because it sank. I'm like, it sank on the way back, not on the way here.
Wow.
But what it would be like to do a transatlantic for poor people back then, not the rich people with the but like the people down below, like that sounds really terrible. And so to get to hear somebody share what that was like would be just an incredible gift, because we can't relate to that at all.
Yeah, and I think we're on the edge of something new. I mean, as technology changes so quickly, I mean, this sort of thing hasn't been able to be recorded through any medium, but now we have all sorts of tools that are just emerging such that generations that follow, they'll have this link.
Yeah, we'll get to tell my kids will get to tell their grandkids the hardships that they would have to tell Alexa the same command 2 or 3 times to get it to work. I don't know if it's the same. Every generation has their struggles. So, all right, well, let's kind of bring it home. We talked about aging gracefully. We talked about the healthy choices that people can do, fall prevention, really ER prevention. And I'm not even offended. As an ER doc, my whole goal with this podcast is to put myself out of business so people don't need the ER. That would be great, right? And then the isolation. What other messages do we want to leave people with about aging in any way?
I would say that for most folks, as we get older, retiring, the time around retirement can undergo, let's back that up. As we get older and we start to change what gives our life meaning, for a lot of folks, that's their work that they've done for decades. As we start to do that, we have to look for new ways to bring our life meaning. So focusing on our relationships, our families, our friends, and even those things that bring us meaning in other ways, such as spirituality. The importance of those types of activities can't be understated. And so I would just say that as we get older, our relationships are the biggest asset we have. Prioritize those, connection in any form, because it doesn't just prevent hospitalizations, it gives life meaning. And it contributes to Healthspan. It contributes to not only living longer, but living well.
Absolutely amazing. Connections, purpose, all of those things. That's what makes life great. So, Dr. Ciarloni, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I know you've had years of training in these medical specialties, and then you're utilizing that to make a difference for people in so many different ways. How can our listeners find you?
Yeah, they can email me, and I'm sure we can get that to you, evan.ciarloni@connect.com.
Yep, we'll put that in the show notes for all of you who don't know how to spell Ciarloni. Don't worry. All right. And any other way, any website or anything else that you want to direct us to?
Yeah, I would say if you want to find more information or if you want to connect with me, connect.club is a great resource.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for what you do to support our elders, because they really are a pillar of our society. And I'm so grateful that you recognize that.
Thanks. And you too. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Have a great one. All right. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Navigating Hope podcast. Today's guest, Dr. Evan Ciarloni, is a board-certified internal and geriatric medicine physician, passionate about helping older adults age with dignity, independence, and optimal health. Before we dig into those key takeaways, don't forget to grab your free resource, Red Flags and Green Flags, tools for finding and evaluating your healthcare providers. This practical guide will help you ask the right questions and make confident decisions about care for yourself or your loved ones. Download it now with the link in the show notes. And here are your top 5 key takeaways. Healthspan matters more than lifespan. Doctor emphasized that living longer isn't the goal, living well is. By focusing on factors like nutrition, sleep, physical activity, and meaningful connection, we can add life to our years, not just years to our life. Number 2, small changes at any age make a big difference. It is never too late to start making healthy changes. Even in later decades of life, improvements in diet, movement, and sleep can significantly reduce the risk of major illness and hospitalizations. Start where you are. Progress is always possible. Number 3, preventing hospital visits starts at home. Many emergency room visits, especially among older adults, are potentially preventable. Dr. Ciarloni shared that heart failure, infections, and falls are the leading causes of ER visits. The key? Regular check-ins with a trusted primary care provider, knowing your weekend and after-hours plan, and being proactive about symptoms. Number 4, fall prevention saves lives and independence. Falls can drastically reduce independence and quality of life in older adults. Dr. Ciarloni advised families to prioritize home safety, removing rugs, managing cords, and proper assistive device use, and working with occupational and physical therapists early before a fall occurs. And number 5, social connection is a life-saving medicine. One of the most surprising insights, loneliness can be as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Dr. Ciarloni's work with the Connect Club helps seniors preserve family stories, build relationships, and maintain a sense of purpose, all of which directly improve health and longevity. So choosing the right healthcare provider is also important. If you don't happen to live in Dr. Ciarloni's community, you can find a great doctor in your community. Download your free red flags and green flags for evaluating healthcare providers guide, clicking the link in the show notes. Remember, aging isn't about perfection. It's about staying proactive, connected, and empowered every step of the way. Stay hopeful, stay determined, and as always, keep navigating your journey with hope.
Thank you for tuning into Navigating Hope with me, Dr. Jaime Hope. It has been an honor to navigate the realms of health and wellness with you today. Remember, in the journey toward a healthier life, knowledge is your compass. If you enjoyed our time together, please share, like, and subscribe to Navigating Hope. Join us next week where we'll continue to empower your health journey, arming you with the wisdom to navigate life's challenges and keep the emergency room in your rearview mirror.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.